My name is Ben Stykuc, and today for Asian Movie Pulse, I'm going to be looking at the 1985 version of The Protector, directed by both James Glickenhaus and Jackie Chan.
Now, this is a absolute curio because of the creation of this movie and the consequences of that. But to begin with, it's probably best to really give you some context as to where Jackie Chan was at this particular stage in his career, because that would have very much consequences for what we were about to see during the creation of The Protector and also what was to follow. Now, Jackie Chan had originally been sort of discovered, might be the best word, by Lo Wei back in the 70s. And Lo Wei, being best known for his work with Bruce Lee, was trying to sort of recapture that magic and try to sort of fit Jackie Chan into that sort of traditional martial arts hero role, the sort of stern, humorless revenge machine that you would see so frequently. And it was only once Jackie Chan broke free of that, almost accidentally, with Snake and Eagle's Shadow and Drunken Master, that we saw the more comedic elements of the Jackie Chan personality sort of stem through and become the box office star that everyone knows him to be. By the mid-80s, he'd already had two attempts to crack Hollywood. The first, with The Big Bull, was probably the closest at that particular time to capturing the Jackie Chan style. A rather sort of odd movie involving rollerblading and a bit of comedy and everything thrown into the mix, and directed by Robert Clouse of Enter the Dragon fame. But that didn't particularly set light at the box office, and although the follow-up movies that he did in America, the Cannonball Run 1 and 2, had decent box office returns, he was more supporting act in these films as a Japanese racing driver, which again doesn't sound particularly right, cast alongside Michael Hoy. So we sort of fast forward to 1985 and the release of The Protector. And the creation of it became through James Glickenhaus, a filmmaker best known for sort of more violent action films such as The Exterminator. And that film had done quite well at the box office, but again, not something a Jackie Chan vehicle might particularly fit, you might think. And this film was sort of caused a bit of controversy in that Jackie Chan really didn't like making this film, to the point where he clashed incessantly with James Glickenhaus, didn't rate him at all, and eventually decided to, after the release of this film, to go back to Hong Kong and re-edit, reshoot, and complete an almost entirely different version of the feature entirely. So what we end up with is two films for the price of one. And so to talk about this, it's not easy because you have to really sort of talk about one as alongside the other. And it does make for quite a comparison for where Hong Kong and American action movies were at the time. So the general gist of The Protector is that Jackie Chan is playing Billy Wong, a New York cop that is involved in a sort of shootout in the bar, which ends with his partner being gunned down. He then gets assigned a new partner, played Danny Greeny, played by Danny Aiello, the American character actor, and at a fashion show, they sort of end up involved in yet another bit of shenanigans, which sees the daughter of a gang boss kidnapped and taken away to Hong Kong. They basically learn that the crime boss, Roy Chow, who is playing Harold Coe here, and the father of the daughter, Martin Shapiro, have been suspected of sort of smuggling drugs. And this is why they end up over in Hong Kong. And basically to a massage parlour is their first port of call. Really sort of showing off the exploitational elements here of James Glickenhaus. Gradually, there's the two cops go around Hong Kong, much to the disdain of the superintendent there. Remember, this is still the time of the Royal Hong Kong Police, because the British government was still in charge here at the time. they basically go around causing absolute mayhem and also encounter a rather young Moon Lee at the time, who basically gets involved in the plot and who's her father, and just various bits and pieces happen on that. It really is not the most exciting of plots, to be honest with you. The action leads to the inevitable conclusion, with Jackie Chan squaring off with the American martial arts expert Bill Superfoot Wallace, those who will remember him from facing off against Chuck Norris in The Force of One, and inevitable stunts and explosions that will come from that. So the movie itself, the American version can be quite classically seen as the usual. And by that I mean it's stereotypical. We have the mismatched cop movie here. We've got the Jackie Chan as angry cop. We've also got Daniello as another angry cop, trying to get along in Hong Kong, and all the various cultural differences that seem to occur with those. So it's the fish out of water movie, it's the buddy cop movie that we have seen so many times, from Lethal Weapon, even into Jackie Chan's Rush Hour trilogy with Chris Tucker. This is everything you would expect a standard American action movie, cop movie to be. Now, that's not to say it's necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily good either, because you don't get any sense of Jackie Chan's character here. The character Billy Wong is just an angry, monosyllabic action lead. Again, this movie could have been made without Jackie Chan, and you would notice the difference. Only in the action sequences we see a slight variation, but there is nothing there that makes him stand out. And he's also very clearly an uncomfortable fit. We're almost going back to the Lo Wei situation here. He's escaped the shackles of Lo Wei. He's become a big star in his own right. He's become a director in his own right. And now he's being pigeonholed into a character that doesn't suit him. It also doesn't sort of fit within the audience that has come to know what he does. And this is where the clash had really happened here, because James Clickenhouse was very, very firm in that this is my way of making movies. I'm the director, I'm in charge. As we know, Jackie Chan has a little bit of an ego, and he is a director in his own right. He's done the Project A movies by this point. He's done The Young Master. He's done Dragon Lord. And he sees how he's being filmed, how that action's being shot, and he's having his tuppence worth and is getting shot down. Net consequence, off he goes back to Hong Kong. He's not happy having to be dragged back. And you can tell he's not enjoying this film. Daniello, on the other hand, is clearly having a ball. Over in Hong Kong, he's just enjoying himself, he's having a great time on that bit. But the idea of his character is never really explored. We see that he's also known for aggression. His character has been demoted because of potential police brutality. That never really gets explored here. So you've got these two angry cops going around Hong Kong that are both potentially violent, and they're no, it's absolutely okay. They've got the usual police chief that's going to be supportive. The only variation to the standard template here is the superintendent over in Hong Kong is the angry, shouty police chief that we always get, and he's British because it's over in Hong Kong. Other than that, this movie needn't even be in Hong Kong. You better just have it standard over in America still. The style of the American version, again, is very much James Glickenhaus, and your appreciation of the film will really depend on how you like your action sequences and how you like them shot and framed. Because this is traditional 1980s standard style American action, where if you watch the fight sequences before, it's punch, reaction, kick, reaction. There's elements of Jackie Chan in there, but it's clearly diluted. This is the Diet Coke version of a Jackie Chan film. Um, he's not in charge here as much as he wants to be, and that really does not like this. And also there's the usual nudity, the loads of blood squibs, slow motion, all the standard exploitational elements that you would see in an 80s action movie are basically bunged in here for your viewing pleasure. And again, it's up to you whether you like that or not. The final confrontation inevitably features Bill Superfoot Wallace. And if you have watched both versions, this is where you get to see the complete contrast in how American action cinema was shot and framed at the time and how the Hong Kong style worked. And that is really where you get to see the major differences in the two versions. The Hong Kong version, everything I've mentioned, they kind of tried to edit out the swearing, the violence, the nudity. There was an added plot with Sully Yang brought in here as a dancer who gets caught up in the circumstances, attempting to add more depth. There's more of the Jackie Chan elements here in how he stylizes things. Again, this is the interesting. This is actually the Jackie Chan bit here. When we're talking about the Hong Kong version, the female leads don't really get up to much. Moon Lee, this is before her days of being an action star, is pretty much there. They're there to be kidnapped and rescued. Same as Sally doesn't really get involved in the action other than just to be an observer. And that is always something I've been about Jackie Chan films on there. We never get to see any sort of female leads do anything to be on a par with him until we get to Police Story 3. So that part I can't really criticise the overall feature, and I don't lay that on James Glickenhaus. But the style of his film is it's bland. There's nothing here that's exciting. It's just a standard action movie. And the Hong Kong version unfortunately suffers in that the bulk of the content was already in the can. And there's an expression, you can't polish a turd. Jackie Chan tried here, but it never really fully comes to life. As I said, watch the finale because that actually gives us some really good insight. The American version is a lot slower paced. The lighting is different when you watch it and there as well. But one particular little point, when you see the supporters moving the saw around, Jackie Chan is further away. Watch the Hong Kong version, Jackie Chan has put himself closer to the danger. It's much more riskier, in particular when you see all his stunt work, much closer in vein to his actual style. The pacing is faster. Superfoot Wallace actually looks a bit more fluid in those sequences. Otherwise, it looks a bit stilted in the American version. That's the same way with everything. Everything's slowed down. For some reason, they seem to think that obviously people can keep up with the action, so everything has to be sort of really sort of done and spelt out to you. The Hong Kong version allows a bit better pacing for that. The rest of the movie, just unfortunately though, it's, as I said, you can't polish the turd. It's not a great film. The Protector is passable nonsense if you like that style, but it's exploitational, over the top violence, etc. The Hong Kong version tries to lift it, but there's very much the impression that he's not fully behind this. It's just to make something a bit more palatable to his local market. Now, as I said at the beginning of this review, there were consequences to this feature, and happily, it was a good one. Because Jackie Chan had such a bad time on The Protector, he decided to do his own riposte, and then a year or so later, we got to see the classic that is Police Story, which featured everything that The Protector wasn't. Better stunts, better action, more of the comedy. So it actually gave him the idea, the genesis, if you will, of Police Story. So from bad, it ultimately comes good. It also meant that Jackie Chan gave up on Hollywood for a good number of years, and so focused on his Hong Kong product. And as we see with the vehicles that were to come from this, it's probably a wiser course of action. Hollywood cinema really wasn't ready for a Oriental action lead, and it can arguably said that they still struggle technically to this day. And once Rumble in the Bronx came out in the early 90s, that gave them a second real opportunity to really break into America, which fortunately for all of us, he managed with both hands. So, in summary, if you want to watch a good Jackie Chan cop movie, watch Police Story. If you want to watch a bit of cinematic history, and if you're very much a film critic or a studier of fight sequences and etc., then give it a try. Though I would recommend possibly watching both versions. If you just want to watch it for curiosity's sake, go for it. But just a word of warning: this is not your standard Jackie Chan film. It's not great. It's passable, but as I said, watch Police Story. Thank you.